Could Diddy get bail? May sound like a long shot, but is there something that could maybe change the judge's mind? Well, we're going to be speaking with the bail bondsman to the stars, Ira Judelson, about whether Diddy may get out in a rumored new bail package. He has been working with Diddy's team. Plus, what can we expect about whether the rap mogul will spend the next decade or two behind bars?
Diddy's guilty verdict had just been delivered, and the courtroom buzzed with a charged, almost surreal tension. Reporters scrambled to push out updates, while phones across the room lit up with messages and breaking news alerts. As the public tried to process the stunning decision, behind closed doors, his legal team was already in overdrive, desperately plotting a last-minute strategy to salvage what they could.
On Combs' post-verdict world is what's next, right? After being convicted of 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution and acquitted of racketeering conspiracy and 2 counts of sex trafficking, now we ask, what is his sentence going to be on those 2 charges, the Mann Act charges? And there's also another question that we're going to address today. Could he get bail? Could he get out? You might be saying, Jesse, wait a second, he was denied bail at every turn. And you would be right, he was. Despite proposing extensive bail conditions during the course of this legal saga, including a $50 million bail package and monitoring by private security personnel, the court was not convinced. Now, by law, the defense has the burden to prove that Combs is not a flight risk or danger to the community. And given the charges, the allegations, including that he was improperly trying to contact people in the case pre-trial, he was always denied release. But then there's what happened after the verdict last week. And this is an interesting conversation. And again, we're going to be speaking with Ira Judelson in a minute, who's been working with Diddy's team on possibly getting him released. But after the verdict, the defense applied for Combs to be released from detention pending sentencing. But that request was again denied by Judge Arun Subramanian. The defense argued, look, he's no longer charged with RICO, there's no longer presumption of detention, we have his passport, there's no access to private planes, there's no criminal history, this is his first conviction, he would be a fool to mess any of this up because he was just given his life back by the jury, he wasn't convicted of the highest charges, he was facing up to life in prison, now he's not. He should be allowed to return to his property, his mansion in Florida, there'll be a $1 million bond. Now the government argued, look, Sean Combs, he was convicted of serious charges, Mann Act violations. There was physical abuse in this case. There was prolific use and distribution of drugs. He committed crimes while under investigation, including having drugs in his hotel room when he planned to surrender to federal authorities back in September of 2024. And Judge Arun Subramanian denied the bail application, sided with the government that these convictions on these charges by law, they trigger the mandatory detention statute, that the defense conceded Combs is violent. They conceded that at trial, quote, we own the domestic violence. That's what the defense had said. The judge also made the point that it was impossible for the defense to demonstrate that he poses no danger, particularly given his violence after the searches of his properties and when he knew he was under investigation. That's the whole Violent Jane episode, attacking Jane, one of the victims in this case. And also that the evidence at trial showed there was a years-long pattern of abuse and violence. But despite the judge denying Combs' release once again, and given that his sentencing has officially been confirmed for October 3rd, that was agreed by both the defense and the prosecution yesterday, could he get out beforehand? It's an interesting question. Let me bring in right now a special guest. I am joined by one of the most renowned bail bondsmen, probably in the country, definitely in New York, Ira Judelson. Ira, thank you so much for coming here on Sidebar, and pleasure to meet you.
You too, Jess. Pleasure myself.
Let's talk a little bit about what you do. Talk about what you do. I don't know if everybody completely understands the process and your role in it.
You know, it's funny. Not a lot of people understand the world of bail. They think that a bondsman just raises his hand and you know, that's where it ends. With me, it starts with the people that you meet, the lawyers, the judges, the DAs, hearing about a bail, putting it together, which could take days, weeks, as in this case that we're talking about right now, Puffy. I started on this case going back almost 7 months ago when they brought me in as a consultant because...
One last shot, one final Hail Mary. They weren't asking for bail after sentencing, they wanted it before. Why? Because they saw the storm coming, and they knew it wouldn't just be rough, it would be catastrophic. They needed time. Time to regroup. Time to move. Time to stall what they knew was inevitable. This wasn't about hope. No one was expecting a miracle. They were grasping at whatever loophole they could find, because time had run out and everything was crashing down around them. The moment the jury foreman said, "Guilty," Diddy's entire demeanor changed. Reality hit him like a freight train. The swagger vanished. That familiar smirk disappeared. The untouchable aura? Gone. And in its place was something we'd never seen on him before. Raw, undeniable fear. Not the kind you perform. The kind that hits when you know it's truly the end. The cameras didn't catch what happened behind closed doors, but those inside didn't need footage to describe the scene. His legal team was in a frenzy, papers flying, laptop screens glowing, tense whispers turning into sharp exchanges, phones buzzing nonstop. They were already filing emergency motions before the sound of the gavel had even faded. N.
Combs, there was a very unique bail package. And you didn't tell me if it was unique. $50 million, right?
Yes.
You know, the idea of private security. It was an
Yes.
interesting argument because who would monitor him. It was interesting because the prosecution at one point had said it's not fair, right? He's a wealthy celebrity who's providing a bail package that other people in his similar position wouldn't be able to provide. Now, the defense was like, well, the only reason we're presenting a package like this is because of what he's accused of and his wealth and his resources. We have to address that in a certain way. The reason it's so extensive is because of his wealth and resources. That bail package that was put forward was rejected by the court. What did you make of that?
Well, at that time, the judge was looking at the RICO Act and sex trafficking. So, Puffy was looking at possibly 25 years, or more, depending on what the guidelines were based on if he was convicted. So at 55 years old, at that time, it's almost a life sentence. So, and he has a lot of wealth and he had a private plane. So the judge was looking at that. Plus, in the federal system, they look at danger to the community. Where in the state system, they're not allowed to look at that. They look at risk of flight. So I think with all the letters behind that were coming in that we were not really privy to from a lot of the alleged victims, I think the judge made a decision that, hey, this is not going to be sufficient enough. I thought that at the end, he kind of, when we brought it on our private security team and we showed him who was going to be doing it, we did Sam Bankman-Fried. So we knew that, we would be completely covered on that end. And we gave him the idea of there would be no Wi-Fi in the building that we were looking at, and that he would not be able to really be able to connect with anybody but his legal team and his family. We thought at that point that maybe we had a chance, but at the end, the judge denied it, and that's where we stood. And now on this case coming forward, after the convictions, after he wasn't convicted, at the end, we didn't know what he was going to do. So, when Mark reached out to me afterwards, we started thinking about putting another bail package together.
And what is that bail package and by the way, is this a bail package that you think could be submitted again even after the judge just denied bail?
Well, the judge denied bail based on the statute, and the statute stated a certain amount of information that part of the Mann Act that, was not eligible for bail. There are certain circumstances that can be done. We're going to regroup again. I know that they were going to go talk to Mr. Combs again and see what happens there. They have the October 3rd date. And I don't know where he stood. As of the other day, he wanted to get out. I don't think anybody wants to be at MDC where he is. So we're going to reconvene and see what happens, at a later date. We could go back with another package.
Would it require him to stay in New York? Would it be him to be, I know he wanted to go back to his property in Miami, Florida. And there's also an interesting question, I think, that his defense put forward. He just got his life back. That's what they said. He wasn't convicted of the top charges. He was convicted of transportation to engage in prostitution, but he would be a fool to try to violate any of those conditions.
They didn't waste a second, because they knew Diddy couldn't afford to lose even one. His legal team came out swinging, throwing everything they had at the judge. They spoke of his strong ties to the community, portraying him as a devoted father, a successful entrepreneur, a generous philanthropist. They insisted he wasn't a flight risk, that he had no plans to flee, that his celebrity made vanishing impossible. But everyone in that courtroom knew the truth. Diddy had the wealth, the influence, and every resource needed to disappear without a trace. And the prosecution? They didn't flinch. They came armed, and they brought the receipts. "Your Honor," the lead prosecutor began, voice calm but cutting. "This is not a man who plays by the rules. He owns private jets tucked behind shell companies. He holds property in countries with no extradition agreements. He has access to millions in cash, hidden under aliases." Then came the punch. If he gets bail today, he'll be gone before the ink even dries. And they weren't making empty threats. They laid everything bare: bank records, flight logs, secret properties, even text chains and emails between assistants planning discreet getaways. This wasn't speculation. It was a blueprint NN.
When potentially he may get a rather lenient sentence compared to what he was facing. So two questions there. Do you think that it would require him to be in New York as opposed to Florida? And do you think that he'd really be in a position to violate the conditions?
First question is, I can't determine what a judge is thinking. I don't think, and this is my opinion, that the judge would let him out of the jurisdiction. I don't know. We can do private security down in Miami. We could also do private security in California, as we did with Sam Bankman-Fried. I would probably think that if the judge would think about possibly a package, that he would want us to keep him here. When we first put the first package together, going a few months back, we did have an apartment here in the city that I did scout out and located a brownstone in New York that was sufficient enough, which we thought, which was one entrance in, one entrance out, for our security to be there, and no rooftop, couldn't get out from any of the windows. So we could always go back and see if that's still available. I don't know if it is or not. So I can't determine what a judge is going to think. I don't think he would let that happen if he decided to make bail, but you never know. This judge was very fair to both sides in the trial. And as far as would he want to screw up what he, after being, the convictions not coming through, I think he got to be dumb to do something like that.
Right.
He is going to possibly get his life back. I don't know what's going to happen in the music world. I don't know what's going to happen in his regular life, but he's not facing the time that he was facing before that.
And I'm going to talk about sentencing a little bit later on. The private security, right, that would monitor him 24/7. The argument could be, and this is something the prosecution's put forward, how can we trust that he's not just they're not bought and paid for, they're not really gonna watch him if he's hiring them, there's a conflict of interest there. What's your response to that?
My team is ex-law enforcement, all gentlemen that have been involved either in the Marshal Service, FBI, police, even some CIA. So again, my people would not risk their lives on something or risk their reputation or even possibly a criminal charge on something like this. So my guys are vetted. They've been doing this a very long time. So they wouldn't jeopardize anything like that. Now, when we first talked about private security, Puffy wanted some of his people. We denied that right away. It's our guys. It's my reputation on the line here. And that's when I went to court and Tony Rico and Mark Agnifilo both stood up and said, hey, Mr. Judelson is, his reputation's on the line here. He's been doing this a long time. I've bailed out Harvey Weinstein, Conor McGregor, Plaxico Burress, Cat Williams, Lawrence Taylor. So, I'm not going to put my reputation or my license in jeopardy, for X amount of money. To me, I'm going on. I might want to turn this business over to my son one day.
Yeah, the New York Times did a profile on you called Bailing Out the Stars. How are celebrities different? How are they different from other criminal defendants?
More demanding. When you get the phone call from the lawyer or whoever, a publicist, anybody, it could happen in the middle of the night. A celebrity does not want to spend an extra minute incarcerated. Things change so drastically with...
They called him a high-functioning manipulator, a master of disguise, someone who could light up a room with charm while pulling strings in the shadows. A man who wore power like armor and wielded his influence as a shield. And in that moment, the weight of it all settled over the courtroom. This wasn't just about one man. It was about years of harm, years of silence, and a deception so carefully constructed it had almost gone unnoticed. Diddy sat frozen in his chair, gripping the wooden arms like they might keep him from falling apart. His lawyers gave it everything: character references, records of charitable donations, emotional arguments. They leaned on every tired excuse they could find. But the judge? Cold as stone, unimpressed by the fame, unshaken by the performance, unmoved by tears that didn't seem to come from a place of truth. And then came the words, "Bail denied." Just 2 words. But they landed like a verdict, because now it was real. No more hiding behind bodyguards and PR spin, no more Instagram illusions rewriting reality. Diddy wasn't going home. He wasn't walking free. He was heading straight to a cell. And the fall was immediate. His legal team slumped in their chairs, his expression shattered. He glanced around like the sky had just collapsed, because in his world, it had. Outside that courtroom, the world was watching. News alerts were lighting up everywhere.
So, Elizabeth, let's talk about what happened next, because right after the verdict, it goes into the idea of, can he be released on bail? Okay, and the judge set a hearing for 5 p.m., so later on today, you literally, at the time of this recording, just got out of there. Remember, from a legal point of view, the burden is on the defense to show that Sean Combs is not a danger or won't flee. What was the judge's decision, and why did the judge decide that?
Well, given that the top of our show, Jesse, or the top of your show, because it's a sidebar presented by Law and Crime with the host of Jesse Weber, but given at the top of the show that we didn't announce that Sean Combs walked out of this courthouse, I think it was kind of a little bit of a spoiler for the viewers here that the judge decided to keep him behind bars until his sentencing hearing. So I did see kind of a little bit of disappointment from both Sean Combs and his family after the judge made his decision. So the judge said that the jury convicted the defendant on count 3 and 5. That being the Mann Act. He says bail is denied because the government correctly noted that detention is mandatory and it's not appropriate for Sean Combs to be released on bail given the charges that he's still been convicted of. And so the judge says that they disagree with the defense's argument, saying that any felony under 117, and Jesse, you probably know that more than me, requires detention. And he said even if the defendant is required to not be likely to present a danger to the community, the judge even kind of pointing out just some of what we had heard during the trial where the defense conceded that the defendant, Sean Combs, was violent. The judge said, "We own the domestic violence." That was a word that he took from the transcript because Mark Agnifilo had said that in open court. He told the jurors that, and he told them that multiple times, and the judge pointed it out multiple times from the transcript. He says that the defendant's concession as to domestic violence wasn't necessary. He pointed out Mark Agnifilo's closing where he says it's horrible for Miss Ventura what she had gone through, and that domestic violence is the issue, kind of even pointing to her Instagram statement that she had made after the 2016 video was released on CNN. And again, the judge was saying that the video is very much domestic violence, even kind of pointing to the London hotel incident, saying where Mark Agnifilo had pointed out that obviously something happened, that he was violent at times, and that conceding the defendant's violence, that he even poses no danger, that he was pointing to violence happened after the HSI raids in March of 2024, because they kind of pointed to what had happened to Jane just a couple months after, and pointing back to the June 2024 incident, which was just a little more than a year ago to this day. And so for those reasons, and just some more reasons too, the judge decided that the defendant will remain behind bars pending his sentencing.
And yeah, I looked at the government's letter and they talked about violence, they talked about drug use, they talked about the abuse of Cassie, that you have multiple victims in this case, that he used the staff to carry out these transportation to engage in prostitution crimes, that he tried to obstruct justice with respect to these crimes, that under the Bail Reformed Act, they argued this was a crime of violence, that he poses a serious risk of flight, a danger to the community. So clearly it seems that the judge was persuaded by that. The judge did mention something really, really interesting, because somebody would listen to this and say, oh my God.
Live streams were buzzing. Social media exploded. Some were celebrating, others stunned. But no one was silent. Because this wasn't just about Diddy. It was about everything he represented. Unchecked power, the abuse of fame, the dangerous myth that some people are untouchable. That illusion shattered in real time. And when the news hit that Diddy was officially behind bars, not next week, not pending appeal, but right now, the music industry felt the tremor. Brand partnerships dropped him instantly. Streaming services quietly removed him from playlists. Collaborators erased his name. Distributors froze his royalties. No one wanted to be part of the fallout. Fear spread fast, like wildfire. Other big names started dialing their attorneys. Whispers turned into open conversations. Subpoenas flew. Investigative journalists started digging harder. This wasn't just one man falling. It was the collapse of a carefully guarded empire. And inside that jail cell, Diddy wasn't planning a comeback. He wasn't scrolling social media or producing his next hit. He was pacing, trapped, surrounded by cold concrete and the sound of slamming metal. Just another inmate, waiting for the hammer to drop. And it will drop, because this is far from over. Sealed indictments remain. Investigations continue. Federal files still hide names and secrets in thick black ink. That guilty verdict? It wasn't the conclusion, it was the spark. And Diddy's legal team knew it. That's why they fought so hard for bail. Not to protect him, but to buy time. A few precious days to move assets, make quiet calls, close secret deals. But the court didn't blink. Because justice doesn't bend for the rich. It doesn't chase comfort. It follows truth. And for the first time, Diddy is facing all of it. No filters, no spin, no escape. Just concrete walls. Game over. N.